Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. Today's tutorial is giving sleek, bold, and timeless. We're making a sleeveless crochet tank with a deep V neckline, clean rib texture, and a sharp little collar to top it all off. It's effortlessly cool and pairs perfectly with jeans, skirts, or layered under a blazer. If you're new here, welcome. I share modern crochet patterns and tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday, so tell a friend, tap the bell, and subscribe so you never miss an upload. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a big thumbs up, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to support the channel and help keep these tutorials free. So without further ado, here's how to make your collared V-neck crochet tank. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 160 grams of yarn. That's 325 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and stick to the end of the video to enter this week's pattern giveaway. We're using 3 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, and half double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making a chain that starts 1 inch underneath our underarm down to where like the bottom of this top to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 12 inches or 30 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 50. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to do our first half double crochet row. Start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then yarn over, preparing for a half double crochet. And into that chain that we blocked off, the 3rd chain from our hook, we're going to bring our hook down, into that chain, pull through to get 3 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through 3. Again, yarn over, into that next chain, insert your hook, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. We made our way down with our first row, so that was 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. Into that last chain, we're all going to do an increase of 2 half double crochets. So yarn over, into that last chain with 1 half double, then into that same last chain with a 2nd half double crochet. Now at the end of this first row, we should have 1 more stitch than chains that we made. Our following row is going to be a back loop slip stitch row. So chain 1, that's our turning chain, flip our work. Into the last chain from our previous row, insert into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us, yarn over and gently pull through everything on our hook. Again, into that next stitch's back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us, yarn over and pull through everything. From here, continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and just as a really quick tip, we want to make sure that we're not tugging through too tightly after every stitch, otherwise the following row can be a little too tight to work into. We've just made our way down with our row 2. Now our following row is going to be a back loop half double crochet row. So start with a chain 2, that is our turning chain, flip our work, and now yarn over, preparing for a half double. Into the last stitch from our previous row, insert into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Once more, yarn over, next stitch is back loop, pull through 3, and continue with 1 back loop half into every stitch, leaving the last one. We made our way down with our row 3, leaving that last stitch. Into that last stitch, we're all going to do an increase of 2 back loop halves, just like how we closed off our row 1. So yarn over, into that next stitch's back loop, insert with 1 half double, into that same stitch's back loop with a 2nd half double crochet. Then our following row is going to be a slip stitch row again, so chain 1, flip our work, and make our way all the way down with 1 slip stitch into every stitch. We have just completed our first 4 rows. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have an underarm portion that can stretch from mid-underarm over to the corner of our underarm, and we do want to make sure that we're stretching it as if we're wearing it because it does have a decent amount of stretch to it. And I'll meet everyone back right after a slip stitch row. Now right after my 4 rows, I am completed with this portion of my underarm. Now we're going to do some more underarm rows to get a smooth curve leading up to our shoulder. So since we should all be along the bottom, we're all going to chain 2, flip our work. 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving that last stitch. We've made our way up with our back loop half doubles, leaving that last stitch. Now into that last stitch, we're going to do an increase of 3 back loop halves. Yarn over into that last stitch's back loop with 1 half double, same back loop with a second, same back loop with a third. Now this row should have 2 more stitches than our previous row. Now we do need to increase into our slip stitch row as well, so we're going to chain 2. That first chain will count as a stitch for the following row. That second chain is going to be a turning chain and flip our work. Now into the second chain from our hook, we're all going to insert in through that chain's back loop with 1 slip stitch. Then just into that first stitch with 1 back loop slip stitch and continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Our slip stitch row is completed. We should now have 1 more stitch than our previous row. From here, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we now have a portion that can stretch from mid underarm all the way over until we are 2 inches away from the side of the base of our neck. Then I'll meet everyone back right after a half double crochet row that will be along the top. Then we can work straight into the shoulder together from there. I have just completed the entirety of my underarm. I now have a total of 11 rows. This width is just about 3 inches or 8 centimeters unstretched. The increase height that I have is just about 13.5 inches or 34 centimeters. And now from here, since we all should have ended along the top, we're all going to make a chain that reaches the top of our shoulder. Now, as you guys can see, my chain is already completed. So all we're going to do is place our work up to ourselves, making sure that the tail end is still staying at 1 inch underneath our underarm because we don't want our armhole to become too big or too small. Then just make the chain until it reaches the top of our shoulder. Now I went ahead and made a chain of 20, that's just about 4 inches or 10 centimeters. Now we're going to slip stitch all the way down. So once we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into the chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything on our hook. From here, continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain, then make our way down. Once we reach the body, 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. I'll meet you back at the end of the row. Our first shoulder row is complete. We all should have ended along the bottom, so now we're going to chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, then I'll meet you back at the end of that row. I've just completed my first 2 shoulder rows. For this portion, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, so no increases, no decreases, until we now have a portion that can stretch over to the side of the base of our neck. Then I'll meet everyone back along the bottom, then we can get started on the neckline together from there. I have just completed my shoulder portion. I now have a total of 16 rows. This width is just about 4 inches or 10 centimeters, again unstretched. Now we're going to do our neckline. So we're first going to need to insert our stitch markers into some places. The first stitch marker is going to be the same for everyone, and it's going to be into the 10th stitch from the top, and that's just going to be where the edge of the neckline is going to start. And this width is just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Now this next one, we're going to insert it into the stitch marker that is just at our underbust, so roughly where an underwire would lay. Now I went ahead and inserted my stitch marker into the 48th stitch from the top. We do want to make sure that the top of our shoulder is still staying at the top of our shoulder and the tail end is still staying roughly 1 inch underneath our underarm. Then, since we should all be along the bottom, we're going to work our way up with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and I'll meet you back once we're worked into the stitch right before our first stitch marker stitch. We made our way up with our back loop half double crochets, and now I've reached our first stitch marker stitch. Now what we're going to do is just put 1 back loop single crochet into every stitch until I reach our next stitch marker stitch. So I'm going to take out that stitch marker, but don't put it too far because we are going to need to put it back in. Into that next stitch, insert with just 1 single crochet, insert your stitch marker into the top of that stitch. Then continue with 1 back loop single crochet into the rest of our stitches until we reach our stitch marker. I've just made my way up with my back loop single crochets until we reached our next stitch marker stitch. Now our following row is going to be another back loop slip stitch row, so chain 1, flip our work, and just put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and we do want to make sure that we're bringing the stitch marker with us for that following row as well. I'll meet you back at the end of the row. Now that our slip stitch row is completed, we're now basically just going to continue to repeat these 2 rows. So we're going to insert our stitch marker into the 10th stitch from the top from that previous row that we just finished. Then we're going to repeat. So just to get the following 2 rows started and completed, since we're along the bottom, chain 2, flip our work. Put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch until we reach our first stitch marker stitch. We've just made our way up with our back loop half double crochets and we reached our stitch marker. From here, put 1 back loop single crochet into every stitch until we reach our next stitch marker. So I've just made my way up with my back loop single crochets. Now from here, we're going to do our following back loop slip stitch row. So chain 1, flip our work, make our way down with 1 back loop slip into every stitch. So we've just completed our back loop slip stitch row. From here, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until this width that we have can stretch over to the center of our body. Then I'll meet everyone back right after an even numbered row, then we can do our middle row together. And just as a really quick tip, if you don't want your neckline as steep, you don't need to insert your stitch marker into the 10th stitch from the top. You can insert your stitch marker higher. I'd recommend maybe the 5th stitch from the top or the 6th. That's really dependent on you and how deep you'd like for your neckline to actually be. My neckline is now complete. I now have a total of 24 rows. My width is just about 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters unstretched. We're going to continue on with our back loop half double crochets until we reach our stitch marker, and that's going to be the depth of my neckline. But if you would like for your neckline to be a little bit higher, continue on with this row until you get the depth of the neckline that you want. So I've just made my way back. I've completed my middle row. I've just put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch until I've reached my under bust stitch marker stitch. Now from here, we're going to mirror everything that we have here on the other side. So since we all should have ended along the top, we're going to make a chain for the same amount of stitches that we have skipped for this portion of our neckline. So for those of you that have my numbers, I have a total of 8 stitches skipped here, so I'm going to make a chain 8. If you have more skip stitches or less skip stitches, that's fine. Just make a chain of that number that you have. So I've just went ahead and made my chain. Now from here, we're going to do the following row in our row sequence, which is just a back loop slip stitch row. So once we have our chain, start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, go ahead and insert with our slip stitches. From here, continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. So I've just made my way down my chain with 1 slip stitch into every chain. Now from here, we're just going to continue working our way down our body with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. But for everyone, we just want to make sure that we're inserting our stitch marker into the same under bust stitch that we first inserted into. So for me, that would be this last stitch that's worked into this chain right here. Now that our stitch marker is into place, continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So our first row is completed. Now to get started on the next, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, 1 back loop half into every stitch until we reach our under bust stitch marker stitch, then complete the row with 1 back loop single crochet into the rest of the stitches. I'll meet you back after the following row. Our first 2 rows for the increase side of our neckline are completed. Now it's basically going to be a repeat of these 2 rows. So as a refresher, we all should have ended along the top. We're now going to make a chain for the same amount of stitches that are skipped on this side of our neckline. For those of you that have my numbers, I skipped a total of 10 stitches, so I'll be making a chain 10. Then we're going to slip stitch all the way back down, making sure that we're bringing our under bust stitch marker stitch together. Then we're going to do our following half doubles, then back loop single crochets until we reach the end of the row. Then from here, just continue to repeat these rows until we have the same amount of neckline rows as this side. Then I'll meet everyone back so we can do the rest of our shoulder together from there. So we are back. We have just completed the increase portion of our neckline. Now we're going to get started on our shoulder, but just to let you guys know, I now have a total of 33 rows. This width is just about 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters unstretched. Now right after that last row for the increase portion of our neckline, we are going to make a chain 10 because remember that's where we first inserted our stitch marker when we got started on our neckline. So from here, chain 10. And now that we have our chain 10, we're going to do the same shoulder portion that we did for the first shoulder. So we can go ahead and take out that under bust stitch marker stitch and just make your way all the way down with our slip stitches within the back loops, then our following back loop half double crochet row with no increases, no decreases. As a really quick tip, we should have the same amount of stitches as the first shoulder portion. Then I'll meet you back once we have the same amount of rows as the first shoulder. I have just completed my shoulder portion. I now have a total of 38 rows. My width is just about 8.5 inches or 22 centimeters unstretched. Now we're going to do our first half of our underarm portion, because remember we technically did 2 underarm sections right here. So what we're going to do is insert our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made that led up to our shoulder. So for those of you that have my numbers, I made a chain 20. So on this side, from the top, I inserted my stitch marker into the 20th stitch. Then, to do our falling row, since we should all be along the bottom, 1 back loop half into every stitch, leaving 3 stitches right before our stitch marker. We made our way up with our back loop halves, leaving 1, 2, 3 stitches before our stitch marker. Now we're going to do a decrease of 3 back loop halves, because on the other side we did an increase of 3. So yarn over, into that next stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through, and next stitch's back loop, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 5. We are going to have to decrease into our slip stitch row as well, so chain 1 and flip our work. Now we're going to start with a decrease of 2 back loop slips. So into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, into that next stitch's back loop. When we have these 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 3, and complete the row with 1 back loop slip into the rest of our stitches. Our first 2 underarm rows are completed. Now we're just going to do the following 2 just to make sure we have it down. So since we're all on the bottom, 1 back loop half into every stitch, leaving 3 stitches at the end of the row. We've made our way up, leaving the last 3 stitches. Now to do a decrease, yarn over, into that third to last back loop, pull through, next back loop, pull through, and next back loop, pull through for 5 loops on our hook. Then yarn over, pull through 5. We should have 2 less stitches than our previous row. Then chain 1, flip our work. To do our slip stitch decrease again, into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, into that next stitch's back loop. Yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, then continue with 1 back loop slip into the rest of our stitches. We just completed our back loop slip stitch row. We should have 1 less stitch than our previous row, and all we're going to do from here is continue to repeat these 2 rows until we have the same amount of underarm rows that led up to our shoulder. Once we have the same amount of rows, I'll meet everyone back so we can finish up with the rest of our underarm. So the first half of my underarm portion is complete. I now have a total of 45 rows. My width is now 10 inches or 25 centimeters unstretched. Now we're going to finish up with the rest of our underarm. So we all should have ended along the top right after a half double crochet row. We're going to do 1 slip stitch row with no increases, no decreases. So chain 1, flip our work, 1 back loop slip into every stitch. Then the following row is going to be 1 back loop half into every stitch, and I'll meet you back when we have 2 stitches left at the end of the row. Our back loop half double crochet row is completed, and we did half double crochet all the way back up, leaving the last 2 stitches. Now to do our decrease of 2 back loop halves is yarn over, into that second to last back loop, pull through, then into that last stitch's back loop, pull through to get a total of 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4. Now from here, we are going to repeat these 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of rows as our first underarm portion. Once we have the same amount of rows, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back. We have just completed the entirety of our front panel. Now I have a total of 49 rows. This width is just about 11 inches or 28 centimeters unstretched. Now I'm going to talk you guys through how to do the back panel, which is going to be pretty similar to the front panel, but without the neckline cutout. Now doing the back panel, what we're going to do is the same exact underarm portion that we did for the front panel. So go ahead and make the same chain and do the same underarm sections that we did for the front. Then we're going to make the same chain that led up to the shoulder. Then from there, it's just going to be back loop slip stitch, back loop half double crochet rows from where we're at across our back until we are roughly 2 inches past the side of the base of our neck. Now, as a really quick tip, the amount of rows that we have for the width of our back panel can be the same amount of rows that we have from our first shoulder row across to our last shoulder row. But for this style, we do want for the neckline to stay as close to the edges of the base of our neck as possible. So I actually went ahead and did 2 less rows than I have from my shoulder to shoulder. And that's just so that once we seam it up, the shoulders stay close to the side of the base of my neck. So instead of having a total of 34 rows, I have a total of 32 rows. But it can be the same amount of rows if yours is close to the base of your neck as well. That's completely up to you and the style and fit that you want. But once we have the width completed, we're going to do the same exact underarm portion that we just did together. Then once we have that, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then we can seam it all together. So once we have our front and our back panel completed, we're now going to seam up our sides. So what we're going to do is make sure that our work is flipped right side out, meaning the ribbing that we have for both the front and the back panel is along the outside. Then we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Once when our hook is into our corner stitches, we're going to pull our working yarn through, do a chain up of 1 just to secure. Then we're going to do an outside loop slip stitch seam. So finding that first stitch into the front panel, we're going to insert only into that front loop. First stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop, then yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Once more, next stitch into the front panel, insert in through that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert in through that back loop, yarn over, pull through everything, and continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So we are back. We have just completed seaming up our sides. Now we're going to seam up our shoulder. So now to seam up the shoulder, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out so that this seam can be along the inside once when it's worn. Then we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. We're then going to insert our yarn onto our hook and pull our working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then all we're going to do is 1 single crochet in through every side row, working in through both the front and the back panel at the same time. So finding that first side row, which is a side slip stitch row for everyone, I'm going to find that top loop within the front panel, same top loop within the back panel, and then single crochet everything together. Again, my next side row is a side half double crochet row now, so I'm going to find that top loop, insert within the front panel, find the same top loop within the back panel, and insert and single crochet. And that's it. We're going to continue with 1 single crochet into every side row until we don't have any more side rows left to work into within the front panel. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, repeat on the other side, then I'll meet you back. So now that we have just completed seaming everything together, we're now going to single crochet along the neckline to prep for our collar. So first things first, we do want to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to insert our hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our right shoulder seam within the back panel. Then we're going to start with single crochets across the top of our back panel first. Then what we're going to do is chain 1 just to secure, and working across the top of our back panel, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side row. So finding our first side row, mine is a side half double crochet right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 1 single crochet. Into that following side row, which is a side slip stitch row, find that top loop and insert with 1 single crochet again. Continue with 1 single crochet into every side row, working our way across our back. We've just worked our way across the top of our back panel. Before we move on to the front panel, we do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into that first and into that last single crochet, just so that we can mark off where the back panel is, so that once when we insert our stitch markers for the collar, it's a little bit easier to indicate. Once when our stitch marker is in place, go ahead and flip your work over. So once when our work is flipped over, we're going to start with 1 single crochet into every stitch. Then once we reach this little step that we have right here, I'll meet you guys back. So from our back panel, we've just put 1 single crochet into every stitch, and we have now reached our first little step that we have right here. All we're going to do is just find that first stitch and just single crochet into there. We aren't doing anything into any of those side rows, and that's to keep it nice and smooth. Continue with 1 single crochet into every stitch until we reach our following step, then I'll meet you guys back to do that one as well. 1 single crochet into every stitch until we've reached our following step. Just find that first stitch on top of that next step, insert with a single, and continue this, making our way down until we reach our middle row. We've just made our way down with our single crochets until we reached our middle row. All we're going to do is just put 1 single crochet into the top of that middle row, then single crochet all the way back up. So just 1 single crochet into every stitch. Once we reach our step, just find that next available stitch and keep on going all the way down. Once we don't have any more stitches left to work into, slip stitch into that chain space and do a chain up of 1 and cut. So we are back. We have just completed single crocheting along the entirety of our neckline. Now we're going to do our collar. So what we're all going to want to do is insert our stitch markers into the stitches where we'd like for the edge of the collar to be. Now I went ahead and inserted my stitch marker into the 14th stitch from my back stitch marker on both sides. We want to make sure that they're within the same stitch on both sides so that our collar isn't wonky. This is pretty close to my collarbone, but once we have our stitch markers in place, we can now get started on the length of our collar. Now we're going to insert our hook into our stitch marker stitch, pull through, then from here make a chain the length that we'd like for the collar to be. I'd like for mine to be roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 10. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 does not count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, insert with a half double crochet and continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain. Now that we put 1 half double crochet into every chain, we're now going to connect it into the base. The base is that single crochet row that we made, and we want to make sure that we're working towards our back panel. We're just going to find that next available stitch, insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, we are going to slip stitch up that following stitch into the base. Still doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work, and now make our way down with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. So yarn over, into that first stitch's back loop, pull through 3, and continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Then at the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half into every stitch again, and I'll meet everyone back at the end of our row 3. We are back. We should all have 1, 2, 3 rows nearly completed. Now we're just going to connect it into the base. So just finding that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch, just like how we did for our row 1. And since we're here, we might as well work our way up to the following row. So slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. None of those slip stitches count as a stitch. Flip our work and repeat. So just continue with back loop half double crochet rows, making sure we're connecting it into the base the same way that we've been doing until we reach our following stitch marker stitch. Then do a chain up 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back. We have just worked our way all the way around until we reached our next stitch marker stitch. Once when I worked into there, I did do a chain up 1 and cut, and now our collar is completed. Now the last thing we have to do is single crochet along the edge of our armhole just to clean it up. I already have this one completed, so let's do the other one together. We're going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're all going to start by inserting our hook into the stitch that's nearest to our side seam within the armhole. Then we're going to single crochet all the way around. So working into our side rows, we're going to be putting 2 single crochet into every side half, 1 single crochet into every side slip. So finding our first side row, it should be a side half double crochet row for everyone. We're going to find that top loop, and we're going to insert with 2 single crochets. There's 1 into that same top loop with a second. Now our following side row is a side slip stitch row, so find that top loop and insert with just 1, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way around. Once we reach our actual stitches, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch and just make your way all the way up and around. Once we don't have any more side rows left to work into, slip stitch into that chain space, do a chain up 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. We are back. We have just completed single crocheting along the edge of our armhole, and we are now all done. The last thing we have to do is simply weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope you all enjoyed the tutorial. Enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us, when relaxing, do you like complete silence or a little background noise? I gotta have a little background noise at all times. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye.